The first frost always came quietly, a white breath across the fields, a warning that the season of hunger had begun. Inside a small wooden house, a woman stirred salt into a wooden trough. The fire snapped behind her. Outside, wind howled through the trees. Tomorrow, the family pig would be slaughtered. Tonight, she prepared the salt. There were no refrigerators, no ice houses, only what they could make with their own hands. When the snow fell, the world grew still. Food could not be gathered, it could only be saved. And in every home across colonial America, barrels waited, empty for now, but soon filled with the promise of survival. They didn't understand the science, they didn't know why it worked. They only knew that if the salt was strong enough, spring would come, and they would still be alive. In the 18th century, life in colonial America was defined by seasons. Every task, every ritual, every recipe, all timed to the turning of the year. Autumn was the most urgent. It was when food preservation began. Fields were stripped of corn and wheat, apples were dried on racks near the fire, and, most importantly, the family pig was slaughtered. The pig was called the mortgage lifter. One animal could feed an entire household for months. Its meat, its fat, even its bones would carry a family through the snow. At dawn, neighbors often gathered to help. The hog-killing day was not only work, but a communal event. Children ran with buckets of water, women scrubbed the tables, and men cut thick strips of meat for curing. Every household knew what came next. The meat must be saved before the frost set in. Preservation wasn't a choice, it was survival. Without it, a family's winter could end in hunger. Meat was a living thing, and everything living wanted to return to the soil. Left alone, it spoiled within days. The battle was not against the cold, but against time itself. Families turned to the same ancient tools used by Egyptians and Romans: salt, smoke, and air. First came the salting, thick layers of coarse white salt rubbed deep into the flesh until it glistened. The salt drew out water, pulling life from the invisible world that caused rot. They learned by sight and touch. If the meat bled too much, it was ruined. If it stayed too wet, mold crept in. Once the surface felt right, stiff and dry, the pork was laid into barrels. Layer after layer, each separated by more salt. When the barrel was full, they poured in a brine so thick it would sting the skin. Then came the waiting. The barrel sat in dark corners of the cellar, beside jars of pickled cabbage and baskets of dried beans, each one sealed with faith. For months no one dared to open them. The family's survival was inside those barrels, and until spring, all they could do was trust the salt. They didn't understand why it worked, they just knew it did. When meat was salted, it lasted. When it wasn't, it died. They called it the curing, and in a way it was, curing both meat and man of hunger. Some recipes called for more than salt. Bits of saltpeter, what they called gunpowder salt, were mixed into the brine. Women would stir the mixture, believing it kept the meat firm. In truth, it fought invisible poisons, the bacteria that modern science would later name botulism. They had no concept of microbes or fermentation, but their instincts were right. Experience was their teacher. They trusted what smelled clean and what time had proven safe. In the South, Pork was preserved this way. In the north, beef and fish. On the frontier, even butter was salted to last longer on the trail. Every region had its method. Some hung strips of meat above the hearth to dry and smoke, letting the flavor of wood carry through it. Others sealed shredded meat under a thick layer of fat. Potted meat, they called it, where air could not reach. Each family had their own secret, passed quietly from one generation to the next. A handful of salt, a certain temperature, a prayer before closing the lid. They didn't need to understand why. They just needed it to work. And year after year, it did. By the 19th century, the world began to change. Science started to explain what instinct had once ruled. When Louis Pasteur studied fermentation, he revealed what those early families could never see: the invisible life inside their food. Bacteria, yeast, enzymes, all could be controlled by salt, air, and temperature. The mystery was gone, replaced by knowledge. Soon came glass jars, tin cans, and the miracle of refrigeration. Food could be stored safely, transported farther, sold faster. Preservation left the hands of the family and moved into the hands of machines. But something else faded too. The rhythm of the seasons, that deep connection between effort and reward, began to disappear. The salted barrel no longer waited in the cellar. The hog-killing day became a memory. What once was survival became nostalgia. Today, salted pork still exists as flavor, not necessity. We crave its taste, not its security. Yet behind every slice of bacon and every cured ham lies a story of endurance, of those who learned by touch and by scent how to save life from time itself. The fire has gone cold in those early kitchens. The smoke no longer climbs the rafters, but the memory remains, faint, like the scent of brine on a wooden floor. If you close your eyes, you can almost hear it: the scrape of salt against barrel, the quiet murmur of a mother sealing the lid, the sigh of wind outside as the first snow falls. They didn't understand preservation as science. They understood it as faith. A faith that when spring came, there would still be food on the table, that the salt would keep its promise. They lived by tradition, not textbooks, guided by experience, mistake, and the wisdom of touch. And even though centuries have passed, something of that trust still lingers in us. Each time we open a jar, seal a container, or store something for tomorrow, we echo that same ancient hope that what we save today will nourish us when the world grows cold. In colonial America, families preserved pork all winter. They never knew why it worked. They only knew it kept them alive.